Hello and welcome to this recorded webinar on the Male Program Assessment for College Excellence, also known as the MPACE. I'm Frank Harris III. I co-direct the Minority Male Community College Collaborative with my colleague, Dr. J. Luke Wood. And we are pleased to present this webinar as a part of our national consortium on college men of color and in conjunction with our affiliate partners, the African American Male Education Network and Development, the AMEN.org, the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, and the Community College League of California. The purpose of this video will be to provide an overview of the outcomes-based assessment process, to present findings from a recent analysis that led to the design and validation of the MPACE, and to discuss how the MPACE can be used for program-level assessment of initiatives that seek to serve men of color. Now, to give you a brief overview of M2C3 and the work that we do, we engage with community college partners to build institutional capacity in order to facilitate student success for men who have been historically underrepresented and underserved in post-secondary education, notably African American, Latino, Native American, Southeast Asian, and Asian Pacific Islander students. We've already mentioned our national consortium on college men of color that brings together institutions and partners from across the country to devise solutions and best practices and share insights about how to best facilitate student success for men of color. We also conduct research that enables us to develop empirically based articles, research books such as the one you see presented here, Teaching Men of Color in the Community College, a guidebook. And we also have several other inquiry-based tools. The Community College Survey of Men, the CCSM, which is an institutional level assessment, the Community College Student Success Inventory, and the Community College Insights Protocols. And if you are interested in getting information about any of these tools, we have a lot of information about them on our website, and of course we welcome the opportunity to talk with you about how you can utilize them at your campuses. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Luke, who's going to provide a brief overview of the program evaluation process.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. As you know, the purpose of this recorded video is to overview the MPACE assessment tool. The MPACE is an outcomes-based assessment tool designed to support programs and initiatives serving men of color in an overall program evaluation. So, what is program evaluation? Program evaluation is a systematic assessment of the operation or outcomes of a program or policy, compared to a set of explicit or implicit standards as a means of contributing to the improvement of the program or policy. From our perspective, this last part of this definition here is key. As a means of contributing to the improvement of the program or policy. Thus, in this context, the real focus of program evaluation is not on proving that these programs work, but using the information to help improve the efficacy of these programs. Often, there are two different paradigms that are employed when approaching assessment of programs. One is the anecdote paradigm, and the other is the assessment paradigm. In the anecdote paradigm, there's a program, and the program has interventions based upon what are identified as best practices in the field. Best practices can be informed by what has taken place at other colleges and universities, or based upon the evident research literature. Oftentimes, then, those programs use anecdote to demonstrate that they are working. And anecdote is the real focus of this paradigm here. Anecdote really is taking one or two examples of students who have been successful in the program and using that to demonstrate that the program is working. So oftentimes we'll hear a program identify one student, talk about how great this student is doing, how they overcame incredible odds, and how they're now doing great at another institution, or they've earned their degree and they're in the field. And in doing so, what they do is they highlight this key experience of one student without providing evidence that that experience is shared and experienced by other students in the program. We advocate an assessment paradigm where you have a program, and while it may be informed by what's taking place at other colleges or universities, or based upon the evident research literature, there's also inquiry-informed promising practices that are employed, meaning that you've conducted inquiry to determine how should our interventions look at our institution. Then from there, you engage in outcomes assessment to determine, one, the efficacy of the program, and two, use that information to improve the program model, and then employ relevant interventions based upon those findings. Of course, that loops back to then engaging in more inquiry, employing the program, assessing the program, engaging in more inquiry, and engaging in that assessment cycle. Our work at the Minority Male Community College Collaborative supports this assessment paradigm in two ways. One, through our battery of inquiry-informed promising practices tools designed to support inquiry into the needs of men of color, and through the MPACE, an outcomes-based assessment tool. The Community College Survey of Men is an institutional level needs assessment tool taken by students that's used to inform programs and educators serving these men. The Community College Student Success Inventory is an institutional self-assessment tool taken by key leaders in areas that have been shown based upon the research literature to have an important effect on success for men of color. So this instrument has a set of questions for key leaders in financial aid, in institutional research, faculty members to help them to think about their practices in light of promising practices in the field. And then we also have the Community College Insights Protocol, which is a focus group, consensus group protocol designed to synthesize information and experiences of men of color on college campuses. And then, of course, the focus of this particular recorded video is on the MPACE. One key point to keep in mind is that any program or initiative serving men of color should be directly in alignment with the institutional strategic plan and other guiding documents of the institution. This strategic plan should inform the mission, goals, and outcomes of the program. The mission refers to the core value-driven efforts undertaken by the program to achieve its vision. In essence, it refers to the focus of the program. The goals are broad statements that can often be incorporated as part of the strategic plan, but are not measurable. Outcomes are very detailed and examine a particular competency that we hope students will accomplish. We can distinguish between goals and outcomes in that goals are broad statements that are not measurable and not provided in measurable language. But those goals then inform outcomes, which are measurable statements that we can use to determine the efficacy of a program. There are numerous types of outcomes that can be examined in any program. Here are just three key examples: learning outcomes, affective outcomes, and performance outcomes. Here is an example of a learning outcome. Students will be able to describe time management strategies. In this example, you'll notice that there is an action word, describe, which is italicized. Learning outcomes always have these kind of words in them because it helps us to think about the way in which we might actually assess this outcome. So for example, students will be able to describe time management strategies. We would then think about different ways in which they could describe this. Is it a verbal description? Is it a written description? Are there other ways in which they can describe time management strategies? Students will be able to identify the location and purpose of academic support services on campus. These are all learning outcomes in that we would assess them in looking at how students can demonstrate their learning of these outcomes. Affective outcomes are oftentimes the focus of programs serving men of color. Affective outcomes refer to the non-cognitive domain, looking at emotional and dispositional growth. Here's an example. Students will be able to experience an increase in academic self-efficacy, resilience, intrinsic motivation, self-esteem. Academic self-efficacy refers to students' confidence in their academic abilities. Resilience is essentially the ability to overcome barriers and setbacks. Intrinsic motivation is being authentically interested in what you're doing in school and having that serve as a motivation for your drive to move forward. and self-esteem really is an assessment of students' self-worth. The key word here is actually the word increase. Students will be able to experience an increase. Increase is similar to the words above in describing, identifying, and articulating in the learning outcomes, in that it suggests that there is some sort of measurement that takes place to demonstrate whether an increase occurred. The last type here are performance outcomes. Many programs are also interested in performance outcomes. And when we think about performance, we really put them in two categories: engagement outcomes, such as engagement with faculty and staff and use of services, and then performance outcomes, so performance engagement and actual performance outcomes, such as persistence, achievement, attainment, transfer, even labor market outcomes for some programs serving these men. And again here, the focus here is on demonstrating higher levels, which is similar to the word increase above, which suggests that we think that we're going to see some sort of increase in these outcomes, and we would measure the program based upon looking for an increase. We believe it's very important to have an underlying theory guiding the work that you're doing in outcomes assessment. The theory that we use for our work is the Socio-Ecological outcomes model. This theory was designed based upon the research conducted on college men of color, with a focus on community colleges, racial identity development, gender identity, and student success. Theories help us to predict what services will be needed and how those services will enhance the success of students. So here you can see several domains that we focus on in our work. One, in this socio-ecological outcomes model, is the non-cognitive domain. In this domain, there are interpersonal factors and identity factors. Interpersonal factors refer to self-efficacy, students' confidence in their academic abilities; locus of control, their perceived control over their academic futures; degree utility, their perceptions of the usefulness of college and the college degree; action control, their focus or effort that they place in school; and intrinsic interest, the authentic interest they place in academic learning. There can also be identity outcomes. We want to possibly have a program that supports the healthy creation of gender identity, racial identity, spiritual identities, or sexual identities. In the next domain is the academic domain. These are typically measures of involvement or integration or engagement, faculty-student interactions, usage of student services. In the environmental domain, oftentimes this is not the focus of outcomes assessment because these factors are outside the locus of control of the college. While there's some work and effort the colleges can do in mitigating these factors, much of the benefit and much of the resources that colleges employ are focused in the non-cognitive, academic, and campus ethos domains. The campus ethos domain really focuses on the culture and climate of the institution, in developing a sense of belonging with students, in developing a positive racial climate, and creating a welcomeness for students to engage in the classroom, having campus resources be efficacious and having students have access to them, and the presence of validating agents. As you can see, the arrows here suggest directional relationships. In other words, you can see an arrow connecting campus ethos with the non-cognitive domain. Our work shows that when there is a healthy and positive climate and culture on campus as typified by belonging, a positive racial gender climate, and welcomeness to engage, that results in positive non-cognitive outcomes for self-efficacy, locus of control, and gender identity. It's important for programs to have a theory that helps to support and guide their work, but because it helps them to think about, again, what interventions they have and how those interventions will lead to desired outcomes. So now what we're going to do is present findings from recent analysis of programs serving men of color that led to the creation of the MPACE assessment tool. In 2010, the American Association of Community Colleges launched the Minority Male Database to catalog programs, services, and initiatives designed to enhance the success of men of color in our community colleges. The implementation of the database was a response to a proliferation of programs and efforts in community colleges due to poor academic outcomes experienced by men. Specifically, recent data indicate that only 17.1% and 15.4% of Black and Latino men will earn either a certificate or degree or transfer from a community college to a four-year institution within 3 years. In contrast, 27% of white men will achieve their goals within this same time frame. These data demonstrate that community colleges struggle to facilitate success for all men, but particularly underrepresented men of color. While the number of programs serving men of color has increased in recent years, the efficacy of these programs has been called into question. Community college minority male initiatives are sometimes designed on programmatic models from four-year colleges and universities. As noted by Wood 2012, this approach can produce ineffective programs as the needs of men of color in community colleges may differ from their peers in four-year institutions. Specifically, we have found in our research that community college men are more likely than their four-year counterparts to be older, have dependents, be independent, and to have delayed their enrollment into post-secondary education. As a result, the utility in applying four-year college minority male initiative interventions for a community college population is questionable at best. In addition, it is difficult to assess the effectiveness of community college minority male initiatives as a whole when there's a lack of understanding of the nature of the programming taking place. With this in mind, what we did was we undertook a study to understand the funding streams, interventions, and objectives of programs serving men of color in community colleges. Our goal is that this analysis of minority male initiatives can serve as a reference point for understanding some of the common approaches taken in the field for serving men of color. We hope that this analysis can illuminate the perspectives of the problem that practitioners hold in terms of the challenges and barriers facing men of color, but also, based upon the interventions that are taking place, we hope this analysis will also illuminate the perspectives of the solutions that are necessary for improving outcomes for men of color. While some campus minority male initiatives were funded through a single source, 46%, the majority had multiple funding streams, 54%. Most often, 3 or more funding sources were levied to support initiative efforts. MMI funding sources often came from a variety of areas, including student fees, county funds, college funds, donations, and local governments. Often, funding sources supported multiple campus sites and districts. Most commonly, funding for MMIs were derived from the community college themselves, 39 on this chart, and their foundations. Campus funds were also derived from enrollment services and from the Office of the President. Many initiatives were also funded by private and corporate grants, ranging greatly in funding size. A sizable number of initiatives derived funding for their efforts from student fee dollars, thereby placing the onus of funding student services that are necessary for student success directly on students. Some colleges, often those with the most resources, derived their funding from the Department of Education. Often this occurred through the Predominantly Black Institution Grants Program. 5 primary program goals were identified through this analysis. Many programs had a specific goal focused on fostering student engagement. Interestingly, as opposed to on-campus engagement, much of the focus on engagement centered on civic engagement, community involvement, and developing a social justice orientation. Thus, engagement was defined in context of one's local community. Leadership and professional growth were also identified as common program goals. This goal focused on students' future careers and their readiness and awareness for future employment opportunities. Social cultural adjustment was also a recurrent program goal, as programs sought to aid students' transition into college climates, cultures, and expectations. Many programs had goals of fostering personal growth, with an intensive focus on empowerment, spiritual development, and an understanding of self through a cultural lens. As expected, most programs also had goals of fostering academic advancement as it related to students' access to and academic adjustment within college. The types of interventions employed by minority male initiatives varied greatly. However, the 5 most common services employed were professionalism development, mentoring, college success and survival skills, service learning, and tutoring. By far, the 2 most common interventions focused on professionalism, skills development, and mentoring. These interventions were employed by 69% and 65% of programs. Leadership and professionalism development programming was focused on basic conduct training. For example, Programs train students on business etiquette, how to dress such as business attire and formal wear, preparing for job interviews, resume development, and public speaking. Mentoring programs were utilized among MMIs to assist students in socio-cultural and academic transitions in college. The use of mentoring program designs ranged greatly, including faculty-to-student mentoring, peer mentoring, and being mentored by professionals in industry and government. This table provides a listing of the most common services identified. Many services were academic in nature, focused on developing students through advising, tutoring, and literacy, depending upon the program's objectives. Other services which are not listed here were also employed. Some examples of those services included university tours, health and wellness workshops, financial planning, and internship opportunities. Programs specified a number of outcomes of focus. In general, this included affective outcomes and performance outcomes. A few programs had learning outcomes, focused on what programs wanted students to learn from the interventions. Broadly, these learning outcomes could be characterized as understanding the meaning of a social justice orientation, learning how to be a collaborative leader, and gaining strategies for a better understanding of self and others. Affective outcomes were operationalized as referring to dispositional or emotional growth, while performance outcomes refer to student engagement and student success markers. In total, 13 outcomes were identified that were affective in nature and 10 performance outcomes. The researchers identified the most salient outcomes by reviewing the frequency in which these outcomes were identified by minority male initiatives. The researchers then created a curriculum alignment matrix, which allowed us to link program interventions with desired outcomes. On the left-hand side, you can see the program outcomes that were identified. On the top-hand side in the columns, you can see the actual interventions. The check marks show the linkages between the interventions and the outcomes. Thus, the matrix depicts what services were identified as leading to intended outcomes. After synthesizing the outcomes of focus, we identified 7 affective outcomes and 6 performance outcomes that were recurrent across programs and most clearly linked with service interventions. General definitions for the affective outcomes follow. Academic self-efficacy refers to building students' confidence in their abilities to perform academic endeavors. Sense of belonging, creating an environment of support, affirmation, and perceived value from faculty and staff. Personal self-confidence, building students' self-confidence in their abilities to perform life tasks. Resilience, empowering students to overcome and succeed in the face of barriers. Locus of control, instilling a sense of control and responsibility over students' academic futures. Self-esteem, inculcating a realization of self-worth and value. And racial affinity, developing a positive racial regard and feeling of connection to one's own racial and ethnic community. To assess the common outcomes employed by minority male initiatives, we created the Male Program Assessment for College Excellence, the MPACE. The MPACE is a outcomes-based assessment tool that, based upon this analysis, focuses on the most common affective and performance outcomes commonly employed by minority male initiatives around the country. Ideally, programs and initiatives using the MPACE would begin by reviewing their interventions and desired outcomes. Then they would identify outcomes in the MPACE that align with their intended outcomes and use the MPACE to measure those specific areas of interest. Thus, not all items and scales in the MPACE will be necessary for use by every program, since all programs have unique variations in their models and desired outcomes. In terms of the development and validation of the instrument, we began by reviewing relevant literature on men of color in the community college, as well as intersecting literature on college men and masculinities, community college student success, racial identity development, and affective outcomes. We then reviewed the findings from the synthesis of interventions, goals, and outcomes already presented in this video. We used all this information to draft the first several iterations of the instrument. With respect to face validity, we presented the MPACE to a panel of experts who reviewed the instrument to ensure the questions made sense and would be applicable to the target population. Their feedback was used to create further iterations of the instrument. For content validity, we presented a revised version of the MPACE to targeted subject matter experts who also regularly conduct research and evaluation work focused on men of color. They scored each item and scale in the instrument on a scale from 1 to 4, 1 being not relevant, 2 somewhat relevant, 3 relevant, and 4 highly relevant. Then these scores were divided by taking the total number of 1s and 2s and divided that by 3 and 4. We then compared those scores against accepted thresholds commonly used in the field. After using this information to make further iterations of the instrument, pilot test data were collected to engage in construct validation work. We used data from 317 men, 34 who were identified as Asian American, 224 who were Black, and 59 who were Latino. This chart presents findings from the content validation. Content validation includes steps we took to ensure that the items and scales we had actually measured what they were intended to measure. On the left-hand side, you can see the name of each scale followed by the total number of questions that made up the scale. Mean ranges are also presented. Remember that scores were calculated on a 4-point scale. In terms of CVI, a general rule of thumb is that scores should be at 0.78 or above. SCVI or scale CVI scores are similar, except that they represent the mean CVI score across all items in each construct. It is expected that SCVI scores will be at 0.90 and above. As demonstrated on this slide, the MPACE presented strong content validity on nearly every item and scale, except for social-emotional intelligence, which fell below accepted regions. This chart presents findings from the construct validation. On this chart, we present the construct, the Cronbach alphas, and the factor loadings. Cronbach alpha scores should be at 0.70 or above. In this case, for all scales, the Cronbach alphas are higher than expected thresholds, which means that the instrument demonstrates reliability. This was even true for the socio-emotional intelligence scale, though the score for the Cronbach alpha for this scale was lower than the others. In terms of factor loadings, we generally want to see the loadings of 0.45 and above. Here too, in this case, all loadings are above this threshold. This chart presents findings from the reliability analysis, but with the focus on how reliability scores differ across ethnic groups for Asian, Black, and Latino respondents. The exceptions being the Service Use 1 scale for Asian Americans. Other than that, all scales in this instrument demonstrated strong reliability. Now that we've talked with you about some of the psychrometric properties of the instrument, we'd like to talk with you about how to gain access to the MPACE. This chart here depicts the primary steps for doing so. First, please send us an email so that we can create access for you. In the subject, please include the words MPACE, and in the body of the letter, make sure to note the name of the primary contact, title of the primary contact, and email of the primary contact, as well as the same information for other survey administrators. These will be people who will have access to the back end of the instrument to be able to modify the survey and to obtain and review results. Once we receive that email from you, you'll receive 2 emails from us, one with an activation code, and the separate a survey link with a video. In terms of the survey link with the video, this email will have the actual link that you would send to respondents in order to be able to gather data using the MPACE. This email will also include a copy of this video that you are now listening to. The second email you will receive will be an activation code. The activation code will be used to provide you with access to the actual instrument. When receiving this email, please click on Register to begin. Once you click on register, you'll be brought to a logon area that will prompt you to add in your email address and to create a password, as well as to put information in on your name and phone number. Once you have completed these steps, you will see a screen that says All Finished. From there, you'll want to click on the button Sign Me Up. You'll then receive a prompt that says, before you can begin, we need to verify your email address. An automatic email will be sent to your email system using the email that you signed up with. In the email, it will say, thank you for registering with Qualtrics. And it will have a link that says, please click here to confirm your request. Click on that link. After doing so, it will bring you to a new screen that says, successful user activation. Your activation was successful and you may now log in. And then it will have a button that says, click here to log in. Click on the button that says, click here to log in. Once you click on that link, you will be redirected to the Qualtrics front page. On the top of your screen is the web link to this page in case you ever need to return to the same location. You will use the email address and the password that you created in the system to be able to log in. Simply type in your email and type in your password, and this will bring you to the back end of the Qualtrics system. From here, you'll be brought to your user interface. You'll see a panel that looks like your screen right now. There'll be a button in the middle of your screen that says Accept Shared Survey. Click on this button. Then a new screen will appear that says Accept Shared Survey. To accept a shared survey, enter the collaboration code and click Accept. Enter in the code that you were sent in the original email that came from M2C3. Simply copy that code and paste it here and click Accept. From there, you will gain access to the instrument. You'll be able to know this by being able to see the instrument under the area where it says Name. From there, you'll see a link that says InPace with the name of your college or organization. Also here, you'll see several important menu tools. Edit, which allows you to go in, look at the instrument, and make small modifications. Results, which allows you to download the data from the instrument in SPSS, Excel, or to review the report using the Qualtrics interface. Send, which allows you to send the link to the survey to people of interest, and View, which allows you to simply view the instrument as others would be able to view it, both in web form and in mobile phone form. Now, we'll show you how to use several of these functions. First, let's click on Edit. In this area, you can see the prompt that comes with the InPace, background questions that are asked of respondents, performance outcomes questions that are asked, and then information that collects for each of the items and scales within the InPace. If you need to fix an item so to make it more relevant for your organization, simply click on each of the blocks, and on the right hand side, a menu of options that you can use to edit are here. On this button here, you can change the table type. Here you can add more statements if you want to have more statements to the section, or scale points if the current 6-point scale isn't to your liking. You can also click over here by scrolling on each of the different items if you need to change a specific item. For example, if instead of saying talk with professors, you want yours to say talk with instructors, you simply highlight the word professors, type in the word instructors, and then once you click over here to the right, the changes are saved. Another important point is that at the bottom of your survey, you have a trash bin. In this trash bin, we've left 3 items that you may want to reactivate. The first is a question on masculinity, focused on help seeking. While the MPACE was designed based upon the most common outcomes employed in the field, we believe that a common outcome that many programs should be focused on is masculine identity. So if you wanted to use this help seeking scale, you would simply click on the button called Restore, and it would bring this item back up into the survey. We also have items that you may want to use for sexual identity and for whether or not students or their parents were born in the U.S. Again, for each of these items, simply click on the button that says Restore, and it will restore it. If you don't need these items, simply leave them as is. They are already in the trash bin and will not be used in your survey. The next item that we will explore is a section titled Results. So click on this link here. Here you'll be brought to a screen that allows you to review results. You'll see here that it says no results because this is a sample survey and no one has yet to take it. Up in the top right hand area, you'll see where it says the total number of surveys started and the total number of surveys completed. Here again too, it is 0 because no one has completed this instrument yet. However, this is one place that you can look to see how many surveys come in and how many people who start the survey complete the survey. To view results, you have 2 different areas to do so. The first here is called Download Data. When you click on Download Data, you'll be brought to an area of the interface where you can either download data in Excel form, SPSS form, or other forms. To do so, simply click on the area. In this case, I'll use Excel as an example. I'm going to click here, and you'll see that it starts to download. As the item downloads, it becomes available to you in your pop-up menu on your screen. The other area for reviewing results is to view reports. I'm going to click on this button to view reports. This is a simple way to be able to review the report online. Once you click on Review Reports, you have to select a report. You'll want to click on this button here that says Create a New Report. Click here. This area provides you with all responses to the instrument. This represents the first area, which was just simply the prompt. So I can navigate by clicking Next. In here would be responses for students' ethnic backgrounds. I can look at this table and have it in several forms. The first is in this form that it is here. But I also have the ability to turn the table into a graph or a different type of table, simply by clicking on these different options here and following the instructions. You can move forward through the instrument by clicking Next, or backwards by clicking Previous Page. In terms of the icon for Send, when you click on that icon, you are then redirected to an anonymous survey link. This is the same link that you were sent in the original email from N2C3. However, you can use this link, copy and paste it. You can use this link simply by copying and pasting it and then putting this in this email. Again, this is the same link that you were already sent. You also have other options to be able to email the survey and view survey email history. Finally, if you want to be able to view the instrument how it is viewed by others who take it, simply click on the icon that says View. On this screen, you can see on the left-hand side how respondents who take the instrument will see it who complete it online, and those who see it who complete it on a mobile phone. As you can see, the interface looks very different between the online and the phone version. However, it provides respondents with a way to be able to complete the instrument through whatever means is more accessible and easier for them. The MPACE is a free outcomes-based assessment tool. Simply email us and we will send it to you for your use. We do ask that if you use the instrument that you make sure to cite M2C3 as the creator and purveyor of the instrument. Our contact information is on this slide. Thank you.